Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. How is everyone doing? How's everyone doing today on this beautiful rainy day? It sucks here where I'm from. So what's going on? What's new? What's happening in you guys' world? How was May long? What did you guys do? Did you go camping? Did you stay at home? I went camping a little bit. Nothing too exciting. I didn't really go camping. I went out to see my parents who were camping. Then I had my friend come over because we're trying to make wedding decorations and stuff, and let me tell you, I could not put a bouquet of flowers together to save my life. Like, I just didn't know what was going on or figure it out. It was too much for me. It looked like crap. And we're trying to do things as cheap as possible, which is like, it's going to be a cheap wedding as it is. There's only 30 people invited, but it's still like, it's hard to do decorations and make things look nice, and I just don't have the touch, I guess. So we're gonna wait for my sister-in-law to come and help me out with that because I don't know what I'm doing. But yeah, for anyone who's new here, I just want to let you guys know that my name is Jordan MacLean. I'm here every Tuesday and Thursday for you, mostly every Tuesday and Thursday for you, to tell you guys a true crime story as happened here in Canada. And that can be murderers, just a crime like a burglary, Canadian conspiracy theory, a missing person. It could be a wide range of stuff. I also do if a Canadian was involved. Last week I did Chris Benoit, who was a WWE wrestler. So if you guys are interested in that, go back and check out that video. So yeah, so this one is a little different. It's not 100% like my usual stuff where I talk about murderers and stuff like that. This was more of I think that was kind of swept under the rug and people tried not to talk about because of Canada and our history. I find when we do really shady shit as a Canadian government, we really tried to hide it. Like when we had World War II, I think it was, no, World War I with the Japanese people, when we put them in pretty much concentration camps and stuff like that, hid that, putting Aboriginal people in those schools, we kind of tried to hide that, which we never did. And then this one too, with the Quebec government, we kind of tried to hide this one too. Not a lot of people know this story, so I thought I would share it for you guys. So again, let's get ready. Let's jump right into this one. It's the Duplessie orphans, I believe is how you pronounce it. So the Duplessie orphans, let's get into it. All right, so that took about a half an hour, which I couldn't even get anything going on my computer to help me with my notes and everything. So we're going to talk about the Duplessie cases. So I already put my Milk Blur primer all over the bad spots, and now I am going in with the Derma blend, just in case anyone's wondering, because I know I haven't been putting any of my products down below because I have been lazy. So the Duplessie orphans were around. I'm just going to give you a brief history about them before I go deep into the story so that you guys kind of understand what's going on. So there was around 20,000 children who were wrongfully certified as mentally ill by the provincial government of Quebec and conformed to be misappropriate subjects for the federal government. So these poor kids were at the time, and these could have been mental illnesses that ranged from depression to schizophrenia to, and most of them didn't even have any, so they just misdiagnosed these poor children. They were named for Merci Duplessis, who served as Premier Quebec for 5 non-consecutive terms between 1936 and 1959. The Conservative Association, who he was the leader of, was practically corrupt at the time and abused these orphans. They have led to popular historical conception of the term premier as La Grande. These are all French names, so it's really hard for me to pronounce. Which La Grande Nursie, which means the Great Darkness by the critics, so any other party that ran against them. So they were like worse than Bloc Québécois. If you guys know who Bloc Québécois, they're not that great of a party, in my opinion. This is my opinion. This is my channel. I will say what I want, right? Just so people know, because I made a TikTok the other day, and let me tell you, people were pissed. The orphans have accused both the government of Quebec and the Roman Catholic Church, which who isn't involved? When isn't the Roman Catholic Church involved in neglecting kids? That just Roman Catholic Church, child abuse seem to go hand in hand. Am I the only one that's seeing this, or is that in, like, I'm Catholic. I was raised Catholic. I had my first, my confirmation, my first communion, all that. It wasn't by choice. It was by my dad wanting us to be kind of more close to my grandparents when we moved out east, to just kind of like keep that going, because my grandparents were very religious. But once we finished everything, my dad's like, you don't need to be Catholic. I don't care. But I always find the Catholic Church and child abuse go hand in hand. Let me know if you guys also see that. So about wrongdoings towards them as orphans, and the Catholic Church has denied involvement in any of the allegations, disputes, and claims over the seeking financial rights. So that's kind of how it gets going. And now we'll dive deep into what actually happened to these poor kids during this time. So during the 1940s and the 1950s, there was limited social services were available to residents of Quebec prior to the Quiet Revolution in the 1960s. Most of the social services were provided through the Roman Catholic Church, which isn't that ironic? Isn't it ironic? Don't you think? But that was just my little song for today. But yeah, so it was mostly through the Catholic Church, which again, how ironic. Along their charges were people considered to be socially vulnerable, those living under the poverty line, alcoholics in the family, or other individuals deemed unable to retain work, unwed mothers, and orphans. So around this time, if you were pregnant and not married, that was a huge no-no. That was pretty much like throw rocks at that chick and kill her, like kind of like the worst of the worst you could do. I don't know why you had to be married. Again, the Quebec was filled with Catholics. Catholics are pretty like aggressive towards their beliefs. So if you didn't do anything, if you weren't married, if you didn't follow the Bible, stuff like that, it was pretty much frowned upon that you like even had an existence in that area. So constant and just the views of being Catholic was kind of one of the reasons why all this was kind of going down. So the values of both the church during this period was very, very strong. And many children were admitted to orphanages just because they were considered bastard kids. And that's why they went to the orphanages. And bastard kids meaning being born by unwed women. So that was just the status that they got, was being unborn to an unwed woman. I can't speak today. Some of these orphanages were operated by religious institutions, which aren't they all? Due to the lack of investments in social services, they encouraged unwed mothers to leave their children there so that they might be raised in the church, despite the claims of supporting the children. So they did say that they would do stuff for the children, let them go to school, stuff like that. Unfortunately, they kind of didn't. Of supporting these children, many orphans born out of wedlock suffered from poor care in these facilities. So the ones who had unwed mothers, you're leaving your kid now to the Catholic people, which there's a lot of lovely Catholics out there, and I'm sure a lot of people know some lovely Catholics. But you're leaving it now to the people who are like, if you are not following this religious Bible, you're looked down upon. Now that you're a kid that was born out of wedlock and stuff like this, you're not going to be the favorite, right? You're not going to be God's gift to earth. You're just a child whose parents screwed up, so now you're suffering the consequences, which really, really sucked for these kids. So the Lukic-Salem Act of the 1990s governed mental institution admission until the 1950s. So the law stated that mentally ills could be committed for three reasons: to take care of them, to help them, or as a measure to obtain social order in the public and private life. So if people were not deemed unfit to take care of themselves and stuff, they were able to be put into mental hospitals pretty much against their will. Or if it deemed that these people were a harm to society because they were unable to take care of themselves, they will also be admitted to the hospital without having any say in it, which is kind of shitty in my opinion. There is people out there who have mental illnesses that they cannot control and are kind of a menace to society themselves. There is things out there for them to get help. But at the end of the day, it's the person's, I fully believe that it's the person's, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. So you can help somebody as much as you want, but if at the end of the day, if they don't want to help themselves, there's not much you can do. But you can't force your opinion on someone else, even if you think it's right and that's what is going to be best for them. But this law said, you know what? We can do whatever we want. We're Catholics. It was pretty much the Catholics running this place. So if they, again, were kind of a menace to society, that they were allowed to be committed. So for those three reasons were the reasons why they were allowed to be committed. However, the act did not define what social order was. So it kind of left the decision to admit patients up to physicians. So again, I found this too. I wrote a paper when I was in university about Bill 13 when it came out with Stephen Harper. And I find a lot of the newer laws like that conservatives write, they tend to make it it's not black and white. They have a lot of gray area. So then they can kind of like take advantage of that when it comes to the situation and be like, well, we didn't define it, so we can just pick you up whenever we want kind of thing. And that really bothers me. Like, just make a law that people can fucking understand. So the provincial government of the Union National Premier Duplessie, or whatever his name was, received subsidies from the federal government for building hospitals and received fewer subsidies to support orphanages. So, and by receiving these fewer subsidies by supporting orphanages, the government contributes were only $1.25 a day to the orphanages, but $2.75, I can't read or speak today, to the physician's patients. This disparity in the funding was strongly financial reclassification. So they started to notice that if the kids are in these orphanages, they're not going to get any money. But if you say that they have a mental illness and you put them in like a mental hospital, you might get some money out of them. So this is what the Premier is looking at now. He's like, oh, I'm going to exploit these kids so I can have some financial gain. All right, so now time for the eyes. So I went in with a primer, and this is my primer. I got an BoxyCharm. It feels like you're rubbing Vaseline on your eyes. So that's cool. I'm not the biggest fan of it, but it's the only eye primer I have. And now I'm going in again with the Morphe Sweet Oasis 350. It's just 35S. I said that completely wrong. So there you go. So during this, as he was Prime Minister or Premier of Quebec, he was responsible for a significant number of kids going into institutions that were healthy. So a number of healthy older children being wrongfully diagnosed as mentally incompetent or said to have physicians and hospitals tell them that they were based on significant diagnosis made for financial reasons. So they were kind of like, get this kid into a home, so we don't have to, we can make some bank off him, which is to me horrible. I realize I didn't have a mirror now. that this would even happen and that it was allowed. I know it was the 1950s, but like, come on, Canada. Get your life together. All right. So during his time, also signed an order in council in which the classification of orphans into hospitals in order to provide them with federal subsidies. So he made his own law that you would have to really look into the orphans' kind of backstory, life, and diagnose them before they could go into an orphanage, just so that they could potentially make a financial gain. So he made a law that pretty much saying that the orphans would have to go into mental hospitals pretty much instead of an orphanage, just so again they could make financial gain, because that's all any politician really cares about. I don't care who you vote for, but I think once you get to a higher up type of situation when it comes to politicians, it's all for financial gain. Everyone's corrupt up there. No one cares about the working man or whatever it is. They just care about making money, and that's it. So yeah, so he also, I said that, also signed the order in council. A commission in the early 1960s investigated the mental institutions after the death of the premier, and revealed 1/3 of the 22,000 patients classified as mentally incompetent were classified as such for the province financial benefit and not due to any real physician evidence. So they were kind of like, why are these kids being considered this when there's no proof that they were actually mentally incompetent? So they realized the hospital, they didn't have any diagnosis, and Duplessie also signed. Why am I reading the same thing over? I'm just having a hell of a time today. So they found that a lot of the kids, like I said earlier, didn't actually have a disability. It was just something that was kind of done just so that this premier could make some money for the Quebec government. And following the publication of the Biard report in 1962, the province ceased retaining the institution as an asylum. They didn't want to call that an asylum anymore. When many of the orphanages reached adulthood in light of the institution changes, they were permitted to leave. So they were kind of like, get out of here. But I heard that they want the best in those institutions. A lot of the time, the kids could have got beat, they could miss meals, they didn't have the proper medication. They were also taking medication that they didn't need to take. So that was cool. Something that shouldn't have happened. I'm going to try something. I seem like this is how I always start my videos. It's like, well, I'm going to try something I saw on Pinterest or something, and then I always mess it up. And I already messed it up once. So we'll see how it goes. Who knows? All right. So like I was saying, the institution, a lot of them kicked them out once they become of age because they were kind of like, get out of here. You're now not an orphan, so you can leave. And years later, long after the institutions were closed, survivors of the asylum began to speak out about child abuse, which they said at the hands of some of the staff and the medical professionals, that's what happened. They also, many who had spoke publicly about the experience claimed that it had been physically and sexually and was subject to lobotomies, electric shock, and straitjackets. So again, these are kids who never actually had a mental illness. It was all done just so the government could make a little coin. And to me, that's sickening. Like, your government, who's supposed to be taking care of you, is now putting your life at risk. Not even your life, one of the most vulnerable people's lives at risk, just so that they could make some extra money. And I don't want to say like we've seen this again, but we kind of did in COVID. We did get to see a lot of our elders die during COVID because no one checked on them. No one went to the hospitals that they were in. A lot of the staff who were private staff were like, we're not sticking here. You're not giving us the proper PPE or funding to support us while we're taking care of the most vulnerable. So we're out. So I do think like we've seen this again in different type of situations where people exploit the most vulnerable just to get some money. I don't think COVID really got money. I'm pretty sure a lot of those places got lawsuits instead of money, but whatever, you deserve it. Oh, I think I'm messing this up. Not looking too bad, actually. I'm going to buff it out here after I load it on. But yeah, so a lot of them came out and were saying like how bad they were mistreated there, how they should have never been treated at that institution anyways because they were not mentally ill, and how the nuns, the priests, and the nurses who were supposed to be the people who took the most care of them exploited them, which is like, what's new? Welcome to the world. Like, I just feel like that happens all the time, which is disgusting. Yeah, the physician study compiled by one of the involved hospitals, a middle-aged orphan reported more physical and mental impairments than the control group, and in addition to the orphans were less likely to be married or to have healthy social life. 80% reported that they had suffered traumatic experience. Dipping again. Traumatic experience between the ages of 7 to 18, and over 50% of them had to undergo physical, mental, or sexual abuse. About 78% reported difficulty functioning in society or emotionally in adult life. So this idea of having such a great concept of putting orphans into an institution just due to the fact that you're going to get more money from the federal government didn't really do much or was very successful, because clearly the money that they got from these orphans, they didn't put back into the mental hospital to make sure it was a suitable place for them to live. They just said, screw it, these kids can suffer. Like lobotomies, I want to know who came up with a lobotomy. Like, who said that we're going to stab something in someone's head and we're going to cure being gay, being disabled, being, I don't know. They just assumed that sticking something deep in somebody's head was totally cool and like that was going to solve everything. I don't get that. I don't get lobotomies. I watched Ratchet the other day and it was on there and I was like, wow, like they really thought this was going to work. They thought that, hey, maybe if we stick this in somebody's head, we'll cure everything. Like, and it didn't work. So they kept doing it, which is the other thing that messed me up. Was if it's not working, maybe don't keep doing it, you know? Just stop. But again, no one cared back then. So they didn't care about the kids. All they cared about was the money. When you have 78% of the orphans, so that's 22,000 orphans, out of the 78 of the orphans saying that they were sexually, physically abused, and now the long-term effects is they can't get married, or they can, but they're now like social outcasts because the federal government of Quebec decided that they no longer are going to support these people and they're just going to throw them to the wind and was like, we need the money. Like, that's disgusting to me. That's gross, but welcome to Canada, I guess. So in the 1990s, about 3,000 survivors that were left, and a large group of supporters formed an orphanage committee and seek damages from the Quebec federal government about these claims. So now, just for the final lips, I'm going to put a nice, bright, bougie highlighter right here that just stands crazily out. That's my goal. And I think I'm just going to go with a nice nude lip today. So they started this committee because they were like, these people need some closure and something from the government after being treated like this for so long. From 17 to 18 or 7 to 18, that's like 11 years that you spent being neglected. So they were seeking damages. They were seeking just pretty much anything they can get their hands on. And oops. So they're seeking damages from the Quebec provincial government, and in March 1999, the provincial government made an offer of approximately $15,000 for compensation to each victim. The offer was rejected by the provincial government and was harshly criticized from the Quebec Ombudsman at the time, Daniel Jacob, saying that the government's handling of the affair and the traumatization, the alleged abuse by the victims, and in 2001, the the clients received an increased offer from the provincial government for a flat payment of $10,000 per person, plus an additional $1,000 per each year of wrongful confinement. So again, if you were there for 11 years, you would get $10,000 plus $1,000, so $11,000. I think that's how that was. For each year you were wrongfully confined into this institution run by horrible people. In each year, mental institution, the offering among was approximately $20,000 per orphanage, but it did not include any other compensation for alleged victims of sexual assault. So this was strictly for people who were just physically abused, had nothing to do with being sexually assaulted. So that was fun. So they did accept the offer, and the orphanage community was kind of like a bittersweet moment when this happened, just due to the fact that there was a large amount of people who were sexually assaulted and no one talked about that. There was a bunch of other reasons and no one seemed to care. It was messy for most. And then they just got this like, take some money, see you later. So you like, how much money did the government make off these people compared to how much money they got back is what my thing. Several religious communities were involved in the operation of the facility. There was the Sister of the Province, the Sisters of Mercy, the Grey Nuns of Montreal, the Sisters of the Charity of Quebec, the Little Francis of Mary, and the Brothers of Notre Dame de la Miss something, and the Brothers of Charity. The Sisters of Mercy sounds scary AF. I would not want them around my kids. No thank you. You guys are probably crazy. So we are good on that one. Sisters of Mercy, what type of flipping name is that? Right? So, with the government, when the settlement happened with the provincial government, when it was reached, the orphanages agreed to drop for the legal action against the Catholic Church, which was like, why? This offended some survivors in 2006. One of the orphans, Martin, stated, "It's important to me that the church, the priests, that they recognize They were responsible for sexual abuse and aggression. It is not the government to set the pace. It is an insult and is the biggest proof that the government and the church are in compliance with each other. So, like, it is true. Like, I do find a lot of these big rig, I know they say church and state is supposed to be completely different, but we all know that's not true. We have a guy in power right now who wouldn't even let people who had AIDS see their significant others while they were dying in the hospital due to the fact that the significant others were gay. He also, like, loved conversion therapy and stuff like that. So it's still around today, which blows my mind that religion and politics still go hand in hand these days, which it shouldn't. So the aftermath of this, sorry, it's a little wobbly, I just kind of touched it. In 1999, a researcher, Leo Paul and Martin Perriot, issued a report arguing that both Quebec provincial government and the Catholic Church made substantial profit by falsely diagnosing thousands of Quebec orphans as mentally ill during the Duplessie premiership. The authorities made conversation estimates that religious groups received about $70 million in subsidies. So that's a lot by claiming these children as mental deficiencies, while the government saved $37 million simply by having one of the orphanages redesigned as an educational institution for a physiatric hospital. So saying that, oh, we just switched it up so these people can, like, that's crazy. You just rename it so you can make some money off them. A representative of the religious order involved in the orphanages accused the author of making false allegations like they always do. And in 2010, it was estimated that approximately 300 to 400 of the original orphans were still alive, which is kind of cool. In 2004, some of the orphans asked the Quebec government to unearth the abandoned cemetery in the east end of Montreal, which they believe had held the remains of orphans, who many have been subjected to human experimentation. So another great thing that happened to these poor orphans at this orphanage that sounds like hell. According to the testimony by individuals who were at the site de insane asylum, the orphans in the insane asylum care was routinely used by non-consensual experimentation subjects, and many died as a consequence. So they used these poor orphans as type of experiments, almost like what they would do in like concentration camps and stuff with kids. Like, that's horrible. And this happened in Canada. The group wanted the government to show the bodies, do autopsies on these bodies to see how they died. And November 10, the orphans made their case before the United Human Nations Right of Council, and we have yet to hear about that. So I'm going to put my lashes on off camera, and then I'll come back and tell you guys my final thoughts. So there you guys go. That's my final look for the day. A little pink action, a little ooh la la. So let's get into my final thoughts about this case. So my final thoughts about this case is whoever that premier was in Quebec was a dick. Did not enjoy him. Didn't enjoy his regime or his life as a premier. He was a dick. Yeah, that was ridiculous. I also agree with the people who released things afterwards saying that, like, how did the Catholic Church benefit and the Quebec as a province benefit, but then like these kids suffered again. A lot of them are social rejects. A lot of them can't, they built and grew different actions and how they were because of how they were raised. Like they knew if they acted out, they would get beat. They were sexually assaulted on a regular basis. It just blows my mind that this happened and it was allowed just so a province could make money. To make money. That's so ridiculous. To put your most vulnerable people, again, at risk, just so you can make a little coin, that blows. I wasn't like, Quebec's Quebec, whatever. They're always doing stuff over there and trying to become their own country and shit like that. It's not that big of a deal. But then you got like stuff like this that they're hiding underneath the tables. And I know Alberta had the Sterilization Act that I'll talk about too later in my next video about how horrible that was. And how that just ended in like 1972. Like, that's ridiculous. Like, how these things happen and how no one talks about them now because Canada tries to throw it under the rug. Like, it was horrible that this guy did this just to make money off these poor vulnerable people who weren't even sick, who just had moms who weren't married or didn't have a home. Or could you imagine now if we just put all of our people in an insane asylum and like got them, they were sexually assaulted and abused and neglected just so Canada could make some money? That's ridiculous. I don't even know how this even like lasted and how this worked out and how he did this for so long and how no other province did anything. We were like, go on, Quebec, do your thing. It just blows my mind that there's stuff like this that are kind of hidden from the people of Canada these days, that you don't really know about it, right? So yeah, my final thoughts is I hate that guy and he was a dick. Let me know what you guys' final thoughts are down below. I know this was a little bit different. It didn't really have, there was some orphans who did die due to experimental issues, which is another horrible thing. And it just didn't dive mostly in it because a lot of it was swept under the rug and hidden because they didn't want people to know that they were doing this thing and this was like such a thing and people were dying and they were taking their kids and Quebec was making coin. Like, it still blows my mind that this happened in Canada. But let me know what you guys think below. Like, this is something that could happen to the, like, right now. Like, I'm surprised. Like, look at the States when they were taking the kids away from those illegal immigrants and putting them in different camps and stuff like that. This can happen today and people won't know about it. Like, it's horrible. There's genocides happening in China. There's Rwanda. There was Ethiopia is not doing well. Venezuela. Like, there's tons of places right now where stuff like this is happening. It's just kind of swept under the rug because the government doesn't want people to know. So let me know you guys' thoughts. And again, thank you guys for coming and watching my videos. And I hope you guys liked it. The next one will be the Sterilization Act of Alberta, which is a good one. I hope you guys like these different type of ones. It's not all about crazy murderers and criminals and stuff like that. It's about people who you trust and love and you vote into power to make your life better. And this is what you get. You get your kids to be put in a sane asylum so a province can make money. So yeah, let me know. Again, thank you guys so much for coming here. I'll be here this Thursday coming up, talking to you about another true crime that has happened here in Canada or just a story that's happened here in Canada. Again, like and follow my socials if you guys want, and like and subscribe down below. There is a little bell that if you click, you will just be notified when my next video is out, so you don't have to keep waiting and just watching for me to drop my next one. But again, thank you guys so much for coming out and watching this video, and I will see you guys on Thursday. Bye.